It's time to talk the world's game from an American perspective. Presented by Three Lions Pub, you're listening to Two Up Front, where we focus on all things American soccer, from the NWSL, MLS, U.S. national teams, and all the way to the youth levels. Now in the studio, your hosts, Baxter, Colburn, and Simon Provan.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next edition of Two Up Front, presented by Three Lions Pub. We are broadcasting live from the Attention Area Media Studios. I am Baxter Colburn. No Simon Provan today, he's got the day off. For those of you that know, Simon is a professor at a local college here in Milwaukee, and today is their get back together as the teachers and staff as a whole before the classes begin on Monday. So Simon is off for the day, preparing to continue to help shape the greater future of actors and professionals as a whole in the college realm. So no Simon today. He'll be back next week. We're actually going to be changing our format a little bit coming up in the coming weeks here. But we don't have anything official yet to tell you. I know we keep teasing you and keep saying, oh, this is gonna happen, or we're gonna do this, and we're still trying to figure it out. So your patience is obviously greatly appreciated. So we will give you much more information as soon as we have it. It all involves some great things. I wish I could tell you more. I really do. It's killing me softly. No, that's another thing. It's killing me. I will tell you as soon as I can. You'll get more information. I promise. Anyway, great show in store for you today. 3 big guests joining us, all on the shopfutsal.com call-in line. We'll be joined by Yael Averbuch of FC Kansas City. In the second segment, we'll be joined by R.J. Allen of Backline Soccer. And in our fourth segment, we'll be joined by Brian Dunseth of Sirius XM FC and many other broadcasting avenues as well. If you want to get involved with the show, you can find us on social media at Baxter Colburn, at Simon Provan, at 2 Up Front Soccer, all on Twitter. Or you can also go over to Facebook, give us a like. We are getting closer to that 600 mark. Thank you to some of those new people that liked our page this week. It's great to see people that we don't even know liking the page, which I think is ideally the goal. We obviously love when our friends and family like the show, but the more people that Simon and I don't know that like the show, I think makes it even better. That means our reach continues to grow and more people are finding out about what Simon and I do on a weekly basis. So super excited about that. So thank you very much to all of you. Quick housekeeping thing as well before we get started. A special shout out to our presenting sponsor, Three Lions Pub. They won first place in the Shepherd Express Best Sports Bar in Milwaukee. For those of you that don't know, that are not local to Milwaukee, the Shepherd Express is a newspaper in town that comes out that highlights different things around the Milwaukee area, and they had their yearly awards. And the Three Lions Pub is officially the first place sponsor for the best sports bar in Milwaukee. And so congratulations to the Three Lions Pub. Go over to their Facebook page, Three Lions Pub, and give them some praise and some excitement for them as well. All right, our first segment is brought to you today by Too Much Metal. For one hand, you can go over to toomuchmetal.com to check out all their rad t-shirts and all their gear as well. I'm looking at the website right now. They've got some epic things over there. They've got some 414 Milwaukee, Wisconsin hats. They've got some great 414 ladies fleece options, some V-necks. Really anything you want in terms of a style of clothing, they've got it, and it all helps you represent the city of Milwaukee. So 414, definitely an awesome thing. TooMuchMetal.com. Go check it out today. They're the presenting sponsor of the Kick Around, which is the first part of the show. A lot of good things to talk about in the Kick Around this week. Maybe some temptation here, some silliness. We'll start with some silliness to start right away. For those of you that are Seattle Sounders fans, I'm sure you've already heard about this. Nicolas Lodeiro claiming that he could get his buddy Luis Suarez to come make a move to the Seattle Sounders. Obviously, this would be farther down the road because Luis Suarez is playing arguably the best soccer of his life over at Barcelona right now. So why in the world would he want to come to Seattle right now when he's got Messi and Neymar as teammates? Instead, he would pick up Lodeiro and Jordan Morris and Chad Marshall. Nothing against those guys, but I think anybody would be basically a fool to leave Messi and Neymar at this point and come play in Major League Soccer. But it's interesting. It was MLS Media Day earlier in the week, and Lodeiro basically teased saying it's just a matter of a phone call away. He's already made jokes that he's coming to the league. He's already a fan of Seattle. When the fact that he said he's already made jokes, I think that kind of proves that he doesn't really take it seriously. maybe I could be wrong. We've been wrong about guys like David Beckham and Giovinco and Villa and Lampard and Gerrard that have all come over. Even Ladero, for goodness sakes. I mean, I don't know how many people expected Nicolas Ladero to come to Major League Soccer, and sure enough, here he is, causing some craziness. So we'll have to see. Ladero says he's obviously hoping he wants to leave his mark and make history in Major League Soccer, which he already helped them win an MLS Cup, which is huge. So good for them. I mean, you want to do whatever you can to help make your stake in the team, the league that you're a part of, big. And Ladero, I think, has done that so far. But is there really any validity to this, I guess? Does anybody really believe that Luis Suarez is going to come play for the Seattle Sounders at some point? I know the allocation process gets a little dicey at times as well, too, and Suarez isn't going to not be a DP, I feel like. He's not going to take a just multi-million-dollar pay cut to go be a non-DP just so he can go get signed by the Seattle Sounders. I don't know if that's how it works, honestly, but just MLS has a funny way of getting players onto teams that some people think they shouldn't be on, but that's just kind of how MLS works at some days. So it's kind of a crazy league to follow at times, but also can be a very rewarding one, an exciting one as well. A couple of other things to talk about here in the kick around. Dom Dwyer, this is something I'm very excited about. If you haven't heard about this, Dom Dwyer announced also at MLS Media Day that he will be eligible for U.S. citizenship next month. That was also confirmed by multiple other sources, which I think is great. But then the debate starts because, well, do you bring in Dom Dwyer? He's 26 years old. For those of you that don't know, he was born and raised in England, but has been in the United States since 2009. For those of you that are women's soccer fans, you know Dom Dwyer better as Sydney Leroux's husband, not Dom Dwyer, Anyway. For those that don't know about the forward pool in the United States, it's gotten a lot deeper in recent years, which has been great. Bobby Wood has definitely stepped up. Josie Altidore has been great the last couple of months, but it's been the inconsistency that's been kind of all over the place for the forwards. Jordan Morris has stepped up recently also. It's been great to see him try to rise above and really showcase that he actually is, a good talent. He knows what it takes to be a winner. He knows that he can put the ball in the back of the net as well, too. But what really is interesting about this whole article that MLSsoccer.com posted, at least, is all the comments. Everybody's got a comment. Everyone's got their 2 cents. And, of course, that's obviously what I'm doing at this exact moment as well, as offering my 2 cents. But reading some of those comments are interesting. My favorite one is one that a gentleman posted and says, "As I've said before, the prospect of Dom Dwyer in a United States jersey doesn't exactly make my mouth water." Okay, fine. On his best days, his skill set is roughly equivalent to Wando's. Unfortunately, Wando has shown that skill set is not the best for the international game. Agreed that he could be a sub for the Gold Cup or a couple of other caps in games where the U.S. is getting killed, forcing them to bring in different players, kind of a thing. But it's interesting. The fear that Dom Dwyer is being compared to Chris Wondolowski, and it's funny too because then people kind of just dove onto this person as well and said, "All right, you need to calm down. You're acting a little crazy." Dom Dwyer is arguably one of the best forwards in Major League Soccer right now. Chris Wondolowski, at least in my opinion, is not. He'll go down as one of the best to ever play in Major League Soccer. He's gotten, he's scored a ton of goals. He's been a crucial part of San Jose and every team he's ever been a part of, basically, and it's just never really transitioned for him on the national team scale. Dom Dwyer is a young, fast, powerful forward. I would like to see him and Jordan Morris race, honestly. I don't know which one of the two of them is faster. I think that would be a fun little thing to do. I'm gonna ask Brian Dunseth about this later on in the show when he comes on to talk about the U.S. men's national team currently going on in their camp and see his thoughts about Dom Dwyer and say, hey, would Dom be a good player to have? I mean, it never hurts to get more guys in the realm of play that know how to put the ball in the back of the net, and Dom Dwyer certainly is a player that can do that. We know what he's capable of doing. I mean, just in Major League Soccer alone, he's scored the second most goals over the last 3 years. So that number right away is pretty darn good. I mean, he had let's see here. He had 16 goals and 3 assists in 2016. He scored 50 goals in 96 regular season games since he started playing in 2014. And he has 53 goals and 8 assists in 121 career MLS regular season games and playoff matches. I don't know how you can argue not wanting to give that guy at least a shot at the national team level. If he can come in and make a big statement right off the bat, I think it's a win-win situation for all people involved. Dom Dwyer, I've always had big respect for him. I've always enjoyed watching him play. I think he has the skill sets to really make the national team a dynamic and exciting play, honestly. So why not bring him in? All right, I'm going to get off my little soapbox here for a moment. We're going to head to our first break. When we come back, Yael Averbuch will be here with us of FC Kansas City. Stay tuned. It's Two Up Front presented by Three Lines Pub. No Simon, but Baxter today. Right after this, back with more. Welcome back to Two Up Front, presented by Three Lines Pub here at the Attention Era Media Studios. I'm Baxter Colburn. No Simon Provan today. He is off for the day. He'll be back again next week. But for now, you're stuck with me for the day. But I feel like that's not the worst thing, I guess. There could be worse things in life, I guess, than having just to talk to me or listen to me, I guess, rather, for an hour. But like I said, we've got great guests that are joining the show today as well. So I feel like that makes things even better, honestly, to maximize the amount of time we have together. All right, our first guest today joining us on the shopfutsal.com call-in line. She is returning to the show. It's Yael Averbuch of FC Kansas City. Yael, welcome back to the show. How are we doing today?
Thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Just enjoying some tea here this morning while I get some work done before my training.
I love it. Some tea. What kind of tea are you drinking?
I drink this chai tea in the morning usually. I mix it up a little bit, but yeah, right now it's chai.
Oh, very nice, very nice. So, is it just a straight chai, or do you put any like honey or anything else in it? I mean, I
put a little milk. I don't know if that's like English or European or something, but yeah, I put a little milk. That's pretty much it.
Oh, there you go. So you're already a very cultured person anyway, Elle. So it makes sense to to mix
very,
it
very
up.
Cultured.
I love it. Well, we're excited to have you back on the show, Yael. We want to talk a little bit about what's going on with the U.S. Women's National Team right now. Jill Ellis calling in a bunch of players for her January camp to just kind of see where this team is at, and a lot of familiar faces, some new faces as well too. But specifically, I want to talk about some of the veteran players on this January camp roster, because I think everybody gets so excited about the new and shiny players, the college players coming in, or people like Jess McDonald, Akeelia Ohai that are newer in camp, and it's like, well, what are they going to do? It's like, well, we'll get to them. We've talked about them in length, but what I really want to know is focusing on players like, Kelly O'Hara and Megan Rapinoe and Becky Sauerbrunn and other gals like that have been around the team for a long time, that some people might say are coming towards the end of their careers on the national team level, but obviously still have a lot to offer on the club level as well too. You play with Becky, of course, down in FC Kansas City. But just out of curiosity, with these veterans that are on the team right now, what kind of a role are we looking for them, I guess, right now as we head into 2017? There's not going to be any major tournaments aside from the She Believes Cup that this team is going to really participate in, but are they focusing more on helping bring up the youth, or are they going to be, what do you think that these veterans need to do to make 2017 a good year for them?
Yeah, I think, it's always a twofold thing, especially when you're far away from a big tournament. I think you obviously always have to produce the best team and the best lineup that you have within the country. I mean, there's no room for we'll just go with a B team or something like that. So it's never like that. But at the same time, you do have to look to prepare players who maybe aren't ready today, right now, to compete in a World Cup, but who will be for the next major tournament. So I think that the role of the veterans is obviously to be at their best and to fight to keep their starting spots. And they're the ones who are going to carry the team culture and need to basically keep the U.S. women's national team at its number one spot. So I think there's a lot of responsibility on those players. And at the same time, when you have new players coming in, I think, and I was one of those new players coming in many times, so I know what it's like that you don't really need a veteran player to be telling you how it is or directly showing you. All you need is for them to be at their absolute best and be going out every day trying to crush you, basically, and and play at the, these are some of the best players in the world. I think we have, if we did the 50 best female players in the world, we'd have a ton of American players on there. So for the new players just to come in and see how those players train, how they play, what the level is like, that's enough. That's their introduction. So I think really it's the job of those players to be at their absolute best, to carry the program forward, and that itself then prepares the younger players.
One of the players that's back in camp after a hiatus is Amy Rodriguez. As we know, she had a child, of course, and is going to be returning to FC Kansas City as well, too. Have you had the opportunity to chat with Amy at all since you guys are teammates? Have you checked in with her to see how she's feeling at all?
Yeah, I talked with her briefly, not at length. I know I tried to get her out to the training I'm doing because now we're both living in the same area, but she has a tough schedule because she has to wake up super early to train. The life of a mom and pro player.
I was going to say, she's got a lot to do, yeah.
Yeah, she has a slightly busier schedule than even me, and I'm pretty busy. So I think, Amy's somebody who, she's done this before. She knows what it's all about to have a child and then come back, get yourself back to the highest level and be able to score goals. So I trust that, she's done what it takes. I know she's been out at like 6 a.m. working with Don Scott, the conditioning coach. So I think she's put in the work and is prepared to be back.
I think so, too. I definitely agree that she's going to be a welcome face back out on the field. I'm curious, one of the gals that is not in camp right now because she just retired, of course, is Heather O'Reilly. I'm curious to get your thoughts about her move to Arsenal ladies for part of the season of the NWSL season, then obviously coming back as well, too. But what are your thoughts about that move as a whole as we see kind of more players going over to England and to Europe as a whole right now?
Yeah, Heather's one of my best friends, and we've been teammates in a lot of different situations. And I know for her, she's done it all in the women's game, so to speak. She has all the accolades. She's played at the absolute highest level for so many years. And for her, this is one thing that, she hasn't experienced yet. And I know that her goal is to stay involved in the women's game far past her playing career in the U.S. and continue to help the program. And I think this is a piece that she feels strongly will help her to do that, to see what it's like elsewhere, learn from a different environment. And that's true for, I think, some of the other players who have gone, like Alex Morgan, Crystal Dunn, are going abroad to experience something that no matter how good it is here, and our league is very good and very competitive here with the NWSL, but there's always something new elsewhere. There's a new style, learning from different players who grew up playing in different environments. And you can't replace that. You can watch as much as you want on TV. You can hear about it. You can watch YouTube videos of them training, but being there and doing it is totally different. And I played in Sweden for a year and a half, and I can, I can say from firsthand experience, there's nothing that replaces actually going into a new environment that's so unfamiliar and figuring it out. So I think those are players, and Heather, even after her retiring from the national team, is still a player who really wants to perfect the tools of her trade. And
Absolutely.
That's one piece of it, I think, is to go in an environment that you've never been in and allow yourself mentally and physically to figure out how to be successful.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one, too. We've seen so much success from Heather O'Reilly, and I think that she's just an incredible player that still has a lot to offer, regardless if she's playing at the international level. And I think now that she won't have some people might say, the distraction of the international level, I'm curious to see what she does when she just puts all of her focus into playing at the club level. I think that she's going to come back to NWSL an even stronger player and, take the league by storm, honestly, which I think will be great.
Yeah, for sure. She's always trying to take the league by storm.
She does a great job with it, too, that's for sure.
Yes.
As we head into 2017, I know that we talked last time, I think, if it was either us or another guest as well, too. We talked about, a little bit of everything going on with Megan Rapinoe off the field, and some people were upset about that. Now that the page is kind of turned on that, and we've kind of put all the craziness that she was involved with in last year, as we go into 2017, are people going to start realizing that Megan Rapinoe still is a very talented player and to kind of leave what she was doing with her off-field, national anthem stunts where they were and kind of move forward now? Be like, look, let's forget about that. Can we just focus on Megan Rapinoe as a player? And at this point, is Megan Rapinoe, is she still at the same level that we all know that she was at for a long time?
Yeah, I think, you know what people are. Everyone's going to focus on what's in the media and stuff, and those things blow over fairly quickly, and there's a new issue to be discussing.
Of course.
So I think it really comes down to now, like you said, on the field. And I haven't not spoken with her or seen her play in a while, but I know she was still, even towards the end of last year, still coming back from a knee injury. You know, you can be back and cleared to play, but that doesn't mean you're your old self with the same confidence and fitness levels and, you know, and that can be everything, that little bit of confidence. So I think I'll be interested to see how she's returned and continues to return from the injury, because it's a long process for anyone who's gone through it. And I, fortunately myself, have never, knock on wood, but I've seen so many players come back and they're at 100%, but then it takes even another year to get back that same like swag, so to speak. And that she's a player who thrives on that. You know, Rapinoe's a player who can be on the field for 90 minutes. You don't see her much, and then she'll pull off one ridiculous thing that no one else would even think of trying, and that's what makes her special. So I think it'll take her some time to get that back, and it'll be interesting to see her road back to that point.
I definitely agree with you on that word swag too. When you think of Megan Rapinoe, I think swag is a great word that can be attached to her. Just the way, like you said, you know, she can be quiet for 90 minutes and then she can, you know, do something absolutely outstanding that people are like, well, what? Holy cow! Like, never would have thought in my wildest dreams to do something like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, yeah. Before we let you go, I'm curious to get your thoughts too about Carly Lloyd being named the FIFA Player of the Year again for the women's side. In my mind, rightfully deserved. Some people are arguing that her 2016 campaign was not as good as even 2015 was, but I mean there was a World Cup here and then the Olympics, of course, in 2016. But do you think Carly Lloyd was deserving of this title in 2016 for Best Player of the Year?
Yeah, you know, people always are going to have things to say, and like, look at Carly's 2015. There's no way you can't match that.
No,
you know?
never.
That doesn't mean she's not deserving of the award again. It just means, like, there was a World Cup year. She scored a freaking hat trick in the World Cup final. Like, that's like a career-defining moment there. So, obviously, yeah, people are going to say, oh, it wasn't as good as last year. Well, yeah, that's pretty obvious. But I think, you know, Carly is somebody who, for us as players, especially as a group of players in our league, I think that Carly's somebody who you want to succeed because she's somebody who continually is trying to get better.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the players who kind of naturally step out there and they take home a bunch of awards, and that's great. We want to be proud of American players, but Carly's somebody who's always fine-tuning her game and who wants to stay at the top, and not just wants to stay there, but who's actively working every day to be at the top. So for her to take home that award one year, and then I know it was her intention every day in training to be back there and take home the award again. I think she's well deserving of that.
Absolutely. I would agree with you on that one too. Yeah, some people were saying that she looked very surprised when she won the award, because considering how, you know, like you said, she's very critical of herself, obviously, so I'm sure she did the very best she could in 2016, but maybe she was like, well, I mean, how do I top 2015 and try to win this award again? But hey, and
that's hard to do, to top it, but that doesn't mean you can't win the award again.
Exactly, right? Even if you don't finish as that high, you're still finishing pretty darn high overall too, from a statistical standpoint as well too. Well, Yael, we really appreciate you taking time to join us on the show again, and we know that the NWSL season is just a couple of months away. Do you have that itch? Are you excited to play again?
Yeah, you know, I'm always. It's a long off season for us. And
it really is. It's annoying for us as fans too.
Like, I know. So I'm always trying to train with the memory in mind of like what it's going to be like in the season. Like, oh, okay, this is why I'm doing this. So yeah, of course, you know, everything I'm doing is to prepare for the season. But the closer it gets, the more you can actually imagine it when you're training. So that makes it easier.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you joining us, Yael, and we'll hope to have you back on the show again soon. All right.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. There goes Yael Averbuch of FC Kansas City on the shopfutsal.com call-in line. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we'll have RJ Allen of Backline Soccer here to join us right here on 2 Up Front. Back with more right after this. It's 2 Up Front presented by 3 Lions Pub. Back inside the studio here, Two Up Front, rolling right along. Attention Era Media Studios. Two Up Front, presented by Three Lines Pub. I'm Baxter Colburn. No Simon Provan today. Great conversation there in our last segment with Yael Averbuch of FC Kansas City, talking with her about the U.S. women's national team and everything circulating it right now. More so focused on the veteran players. It was good to hear her thoughts and opinions about Heather O'Reilly and Megan Rapinoe, and then even Carly Lloyd as well, too, winning the FIFA Player of the Year. Again, some people were excited about that. Others were surprised by that. Carly herself was surprised by it as well, too. But hey, when you get named the best women's player in the world, I don't think you're going to be mad about that. It's not an award that you walk back up to the podium and be like, guys, actually, I can't. No. So rightfully deserving for Carly to win that as well, too. Reminder as well, if you want to continue to follow the show, you can go to our website, 2upfrontsoccer.com. And you can find all the shows by going to our website and also looking at it on iTunes, the Sports Podcasting Network, iHeartRadio, and so many other great places. All right, moving along with the show, time to bring in our second guest. Joining us on theshopfutsal.com call-in line is RJ Allen of Backline Soccer. RJ Allen, how are we doing today?
I'm doing pretty well today. It's been a pretty good day. Yeah,
pretty good day. Last time we talked, you were preparing for finals, I believe. So you're done and over with finals. Are you back to school yet as well, or are you?
No. I graduated in December, 23rd of December. I got an early Christmas present.
My goodness, congratulations, RJ. Are you enjoying being an adult now?
No, but it'll have to do.
It'll have to do. Unfortunately, there's really no going back. After you graduate, life kind of hits you in the face like, hello, time to be an adult now. That's not fun, just from from one that's been out of college for 2 years. It's not awful, but either way. All right, let's talk about soccer, something that actually makes us happy, RJ. Looking at the NWSL, of course, the draft was just last week as well. Let's start by that first and foremost. What were your thoughts about the 2017 NWSL draft?
The one thing the NWSL has done really well in terms of growth has been the draft. Every year it's gotten better and bigger, and this year we sent 3 people for Backline Soccer out, and they had a tremendous time. For the first round, the room was packed. My reporters just kept going on and on about how great sort of the NWSL did. So I want to give them credit because I often am not giving them credit. So I thought I'd give them some credit there.
Yeah.
I thought it was an interesting draft. I thought Sky Blue sort of stole the first round when everybody expected Boston to sort of just come in and run the first round. I thought Sky Blue got some pretty good bang for their buck.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. I mean, Sky Blue and Boston basically just traded picks in the first round, basically saying, "Oh, we'll take a player. Oh, no, you can take a player." I thought maybe they were going to just do a little 3-on-3 or 5-on-5, basically just little playoff right there in the beginning with how many players each one was drafting, just to showcase all the players that they got right off the bat.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting draft. I think everybody, or a lot of people, expected Jane Campbell to go fairly early. She sort of held out to the middle of the second round, and then Houston, of all teams, took her. I don't think anybody expected Houston to take a keeper with who they had on roster. So it was an interesting draft in a few different ways.
Well, let's talk about that keeper thing for a moment, because Simon and I talked about that on Tuesday briefly. I was surprised by that. We had Melissa Henderson on the show as well of The Dash, and we kind of asked her about it, and she was, kind of agreeing just that it's going to be a crazy camp, honestly, just to see, with Jane Campbell and obviously Lydia Williams going at it, especially with Lydia Williams just being named, basically one of the top players in Australia, of course, for her federation. But what? Why draft a goalkeeper in Jane Campbell when you have Lydia Williams? Is that a sign that Lydia Williams might not be around? Or are you going to try to have her learn underneath of Lydia Williams if you're Jane Campbell?
You can't forget Henninger is there as well, and she's a Mexican international.
That's true. That's very true. I forgot about that.
So I think I'm not sure if Houston is going to use it for trade bait later on. I'm not sure sort of how they're going to handle it. Randy Waldrum alluded to the idea of keeping 3 keepers on roster, which I don't think is going to happen.
I don't know why you would do that.
But I think it will ultimately, there will be a trade. There's a couple teams that could use a more seasoned keeper and Henninger is likely the one out, and she has experience. She's been sort of a journeyman in the league, so she's not a bad pickup.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
I think ultimately you take Jane Campbell because Jane Campbell is still on the board, and if you don't feel you have an immediate need, sort of otherwise, and you have her on the board, I think it's smart to take her because you can always trade her. You know, if she gets into camp and it's not maybe the fit you want, or you decide, you know what, she wasn't allocated, we thought she was going to be allocated, we don't, you know, maybe have the room to pay her what we want to or what she'll take, then yeah, you can trade her to a team that needs a keeper. So I think there's a couple ways they can play it, but I agree, it was a strange pickup.
Can you walk me through what Orlando's been doing the last couple of days here? They just grabbed Alana Kennedy, and then they also just grabbed the rights from Portland for Rachel Hill as well.
I believe that Tom Sermanni is trying to recreate the Matildas in Orlando.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It seems that if you're an Australian player, Tom Sermanni wants you and will move picks and heaven and earth to get you. He really does enjoy the Australian style, which I don't blame him. It's fun to watch, and he's picked up some great players. I don't know how much depth they're going to have. I think that's something you sort of have to question is, you can put together a reasonably to very strong starting lineup, but after that, 12th or 13th player, it goes downhill quite quickly.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of worried about as well, especially since you're going to have to figure out a way to replace Alex Morgan for the first several months of the season as well.
Yeah, that is going to be interesting, but they do get her back. It's
of course, they do get her back.
Where, you only sort of have to stopgap, sort of like the Olympics, when you had to stopgap a little bit, but you knew you were getting them back. It's not like Washington was done, where she's just gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and with Crystal Dunn, I mean, she's completely gone and never coming back. Heather O'Reilly's coming back. Alex Morgan's coming back. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting.
We don't know about Heather O'Reilly.
I thought she was. Last I heard, she was coming back in June.
I think that chances are Heather O'Reilly ends up in North Carolina. I think they'll make it happen. I think Vladka respects her enough that if she wants to go home to North Carolina, she has a house there, her husband's there, that FC Casey in North Carolina will make a trade. I don't know if she's going to play in the league. I don't.
And I don't think that this is probably what they're talking about, but I know that on Twitter today, North Carolina was saying that they have a player announcement today at some point, but I would be shocked if it was Heather O'Reilly.
Yeah, it's an interesting little idea that she might not come back to FCKC. A lot of FCKC people I've talked to don't think she's coming back either.
Interesting. Can I not to pick on North Carolina, but are you a fan of North Carolina Courage's Twitter? Because I really am not. I liked Western New York Flash when they were, but I've gotten a little annoyed by what North Carolina Courage have been doing recently.
You know what? I think North Carolina is in an impossible situation.
They really are.
Because if they deny the Western New York history, you're denying arguably the most important soccer club for women in U.S. history.
Yeah.
But if you bring it in, then it sort of looks like, well, you're claiming a championship you didn't win. So I don't think they could have made anybody happy. I don't think you could have put the collective, Washington Spirit, Houston Dash, Chicago people in charge of that Twitter, and it would have worked out well. They were never going to win. I think I'll give them, a couple more months, and if by the start of the season I'm still sort of iffy about them, I'll call it. But I'm going to try to give them a little bit of time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I'm actually now looking on Twitter. I think that they've already made their announcement. I don't know if this is the true one. Sam Whittleman.
Yep.
I don't know. Okay.
Sam Whittleman is coming to North Carolina, and Kennedy is going to Orlando because Tom Sermanni loves his Australians.
I just don't know. Okay, I just was curious because everybody knows, of course, what North Carolina did when they first came into the league. Tweeting at everybody, basically saying, "Yo, like, what up? We're the champions," and everyone's like, "Wait, don't you mean the Western New York Flash?" And then it just all went downhill from there. So that was kind of their own fault.
This is also the first time we've really seen a team like this happen in women's soccer, at least, if not women's sports, sort of overall. We don't really have a precedent of how a team is supposed to behave when they move like this. So I think, give them the benefit of the doubt. Give them a couple months, and if they're still acting like fools, then attack with every gift you got.
Call them out. Be like, listen, Courage, you've lost your mind, which is unfortunate because I guess I need to start calling now the Courage, but we've had some of our best guests have been from the Courage, so gotta be careful with that one, I guess. But all right, you had a hot take for me that I was really curious to talk more in depth about, and I'm sure that there might be other people out there that share your sentiment. So briefly hit that with me before we got to let you run.
I am not a fan of CONCACAF awards, as many people on Twitter have found out, and I am not a fan of an award where you take arguably the best player to ever play a position out of contention because of a suspension and or termination. I don't think Ashlyn Harris is the best goalkeeper in CONCACAF. I don't think she should have won the award, and I'm not a fan of fan voting for awards like that. If you want to have a fan award, have a fan award and let it just be pure fan voting. But if you bring in coaches and media, separate the two.
I like it. I wish I had more time to go with you on that, but that sounds interesting. So there you go. But you heard it here first. Ashlyn Harris is, overrated. Maybe. I don't know. Is she? She's not overrated, but
She's overinflated by her fan base.
There you go. I like it. She's not an Aussie, so I'm surprised she's still in Orlando, honestly. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe there's more trades brewing in Orlando. But all right, RJ, appreciate it. Great to chat with you. Let's do it again soon, all right?
Always a pleasure.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. There goes RJ Allen of Backline Soccer. When we come back, we're going to head over to the U.S. men's national team side of things with Brian Dunseth of Sirius XMFC. You are listening to Two Up Front, presented by Three Lions Pub. Back after this. Back inside the Attention Era Media Studios, it's Two Up Front, presented by Three Lions Pub. I'm Baxter Colburn. No Simon Provan today. Simon is off, but he'll be back again next week. If you want to tweet at us, you can find me at Baxter Colburn, at Simon Provan, at Two Up Front Soccer. All right, moving along with the program. Time to head over to the U.S. men's side of things. We've had some good U.S. women's national team discussion and some of the NWSL discussion as well, too, earlier on in the show. But now we get to have an opportunity to dive into the men's side of the game. It's January camp. This is the time where so many things can be decided. Players' futures can basically be altered based off of how they do in this camp. So one of the men that knows this camp and the U.S. men's national team as a whole fairly well, I think most people would argue, is Brian Dunseth of Sirius XMFC and numerous other broadcasting platforms as well, too. But Brian, it's great to have you back on the show today. How are we doing, sir?
Yeah, I appreciate it, my man. Thanks for going easy on me when trying to describe where I steal money from week in, week out. I appreciate that.
Well, the first time you were on the show, Brian, I felt it was right to just kind of lay it all out there, be like, okay, you probably heard him on one of these, 43 different platforms, and now it's just like, all right, he's on Sirius XM, and you can figure out the rest after that, basically.
I'm good with it. Thanks, man.
Perfect. All right, so the January camp roster, Brian, is very intriguing, I think, in a lot of sense that obviously it's only MLS players, which most folks kind of thought was going to happen, of course, with everything going on in Europe, but some might say some surprise faces on this roster. Are you surprised by anybody that's on this roster right now?
I'm surprised by Chad Marshall recall. Long deserving for one reason or another, never really worked out. Matt Hedges, good to see him in the mix. Keegan Rosenberry, fantastic year in his rookie campaign with the Philadelphia Union. Probably talk about Walker Zimmerman, solid player. Not sure he's ready for the national team level, but he's been fantastic last season in particular for FC Dallas. Midfield, obviously got to talk about Benny Feilhaber being back.
Yeah, great to see him back.
Yeah, we knew the moment that Jurgen Klinsmann was let go and it was made public that Benny would have some type of tweet.
Yep.
Crying face emoji tweet to stitch Jurgen Klinsmann back immediately for leaving him off the roster for the last 4 years. Good to see Darlington Nagbe back in the mix after what happened in the Cuba and DC game against New Zealand. I really like Kellen Acosta. Surprising to see his name linked with more of a midfield. I think could be the future of an outside back position. Pontius, Leggett, Kakuta Mane, his future with the national team. And then one guy in particular that I'm really, really excited to see how this January camp, out of all of them, I'm really excited to see Juan Agudelo.
Oh,
this kid has, I think, every physical asset and trait and intangible to be the first guy to truly replicate Josie physically, number one, but number two, bring a different aspect to the point striker game. I know at some point we got to talk about Dom Dwyer and how close that is, but Agudelo, in my opinion, I've had such high expectations for this young man for the last 6 years. And I know your path as a professional can take you down many different routes. But I'm really hoping Agudelo stays healthy. He's sharp, he's fit, because he can do things that not many young American forwards in this league can do.
I would agree with you on that one. As somebody that supports the New England Revolution, being able to see a healthy Agudelo for the Revolution paired up with Kai Kamara always makes me a happy camper, honestly. But
I wish both of them were off artificial surface week in, week out. But we both know that's not going to happen anytime soon.
True.
But man, can you imagine those two fully fit, fully healthy, and not having to deal with the effects of the turf?
Exactly. We saw that briefly at the end of the season last year when they both were finally healthy. And I was like, okay, this is what could have been. But at that point, it was a little too late. But I will say it's kind of funny too. You were talking about seeing Benny and Chad back. I'm looking at the U.S. Soccer website right now. I don't know when these warm-ups were in, but the picture of Chad Marshall, I don't know if you've seen it, is basically from like the early 2000s, like 2002, I think. Basically, he still looks like a young spring chicken, basically, with the picture that they've got posted for him. But
love it.
Kind of funny.
Two of the funniest guys. Chad Marshall. Just so you know, Chad Marshall is hands down, in my opinion, the funniest guy in MLS since Matt Reese retired.
Really?
And people don't know that because Chad is so hesitant and reluctant to step in front of the camera. He has absolutely no desire to.
Interesting.
But I promise you, if you ask any of the guys that have ever been in a locker room alongside of him, he is a gigantic 6-year-old. He's like Brad Guzan and he's like Matt Reese, and they are hilarious, and not too many people know about it. Everyone knows about Reese, but
sure.
Guzan and Chad Marshall, two undercover,
really
completely hilarious guys.
I never would have guessed, just because I've always see him, at least in a Sounders uniform, always kind of like, yelling at people. I'm like, he doesn't seem like that nice a guy. He seems like he's always fired up trying to hit somebody, basically. But
fair enough.
You gotta obviously play the role when you're on the field, of course.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Can you help me address the Graham Zusi rumors about him being the next outside back for the national team? I honestly think it's kind of an awful idea, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
I'm okay with it, and here's why. Graham has played there a little bit.
Yeah.
He's kind of in that phase where he's 30 years old now. He still seems like he's a young spring chicken. But like Chris Klein, like Chris Albright, like Fabian Johnson, there's certain guys that I think have engines that can play kind of hybrid roles. And I would kind of liken it to putting a center back into a defensive midfielder role.
Sure.
There's guys that have physical traits, qualities, assets that can play a different position and maybe give you a different look. Graham and DeAndre Yedlin are very similar in terms of width, pace, great engine, getting up and down, and imagining Graham behind DeAndre on the right-hand side. Two guys that can recover, two guys that can forward, one of which can kind of tuck inside, the other can overlap. And you think about the service from Graham Zusi and the quality of service. I mean, I guess I kind of equate it to when we slid DeMarcus Beasley back to a left back, on the left side, or even an Eddie Lewis to outside left back.
Oh, sure, yep.
It's a natural progression to protect the legs, but I think Graham is smart enough and savvy enough to recognize when to keep the game in front of them and when to kind of expose the opponent and get forward into the attack.
Talking with Brian Dunseth of Sirius XM here on 2 Up Front on the shopfutsal.com call-in line. Brian, have you heard some of these back and forth jarring between Tim Howard and Jermaine Jones recently about the two citizen players, basically? Is that going to cause any issues with this camp? I know Tim Howard's not on the roster, but you've got arguably one of the most vocal people in Jermaine Jones, at least on the field, on this roster.
Yeah. To be transparent and completely open and honest, I consider myself very good friends with Tim Howard. So let me put that on the table first off.
Good to know,
played
of course.
On multiple national teams with him and talked to him quite frequently. I think that what has happened over the years there's been such a hypersensitive focus, right, wrong, or indifferent, off the backside of Abby Wambach's comments. I think now we're in a stage where anytime there is messages or comments that are perceived as messages being put out there publicly on the backside of Jurgen being fired, they can be construed. You can either play up to them or you can dismiss them. I personally believe it's a very fascinating time right now because there were two versions of fans when it came to Jurgen Klinsmann. You were either all in or you were all out.
Yeah.
And if you were all in, he is untouchable. And there is a fascination, and I think there is a very blurry line when it comes to Jurgen Klinsmann, the superstar, striker, forward, incredible athlete, incredible player, versus Jurgen the coach.
Yes.
As Jurgen the coach, there were very strong messages sent to players, both privately and publicly. It started with Carlos Bocanegra being dropped in Honduras in the last phase of qualifying, and I think it catapulted to the stage where Landon was dropped right before the World Cup. I think any time that a player comes out and talks in a negative fashion about Jurgen, he is automatically slaughtered and say it's, oh, well, he's bitter. Why didn't he say that when Jurgen was the head coach? Well, the reality is that there were very clear statements from Jurgen with how he handled that locker room. And ultimately, people forget. Imagine if you, in your everyday job, decided to tweet or come out publicly and say something about your boss. You're going to get fired, right?
Yep, exactly.
So none of these guys are going to come out publicly and say, well, Jurgen Klinsmann is doing this wrong. Jurgen Klinsmann did this. Jurgen Klinsmann did that. Because ultimately, Jurgen Klinsmann, for 5.5 years, controlled the destiny of the international play of players, both domestic and abroad. This is the first time that any player has really come out. We didn't really see players come out publicly and support Jurgen after he was fired. This is the first time we've seen a player of Timmy Howard's stature insinuate that there were certain guys that were not all in. Now, that being said, Jermaine and Timmy are very, very, very good friends.
Oh, yeah.
Jermaine Jones has actually tattooed Timmy Howard, so that shows you how close they are. But I agree today with Jermaine's comments. I think it is a dangerous conversation.
Yes.
When you are publicly insinuating that a couple players at the time and the way it came out publicly, and I haven't seen the entire context of Timmy's initial interview because I think you can cut and paste and take out of context quotes all the time.
Of course, yeah.
But with the words that were used, it is a dangerous element. And Timmy was clear when he was talking about Jermaine, he was talking about Fabian Johnson, but I think we as fans can very easily look at the Mexico game in Columbus and the game against Costa Rica in qualifying and say, I've never seen players quit on the badge, but those group of players quit on each other. And I think, in my opinion, reading through the lines, that's what Timmy was referring to. At times, we had seen such a healthy focus on trying to identify more players that can be dual nationals, that can be difference makers. But guys like Timmy Chandler or Julian Green, I think kind of there's a bunch of guys that fall into, are they really all in, or are they only here because they weren't good enough to represent the country they came through? And it becomes a very dangerous conversation. I don't think there's a right answer personally, but what I will say, and Landon Donovan called into Jason Davis's show, United States of Soccer, earlier today on Sirius XM, because he was listening to Jason and the way he talked about Timmy. And he said, listen, I've been there. And Jurgen went out of his way to try to put up the national anthem on the walls at lunch and try to teach people that were dual nationals what it meant to be an American, to have a little bit more pride. So I think Jurgen tried, but I think there's also a conversation to be had, the difference between club football and club soccer versus representing the national team. Because you really do have to be all in. You have to be committed. You have to understand and recognize you might play on a Saturday afternoon. Sunday, you're flying 22 hours to go play in Honduras at midday on Wednesday in 110 degrees. And then Thursday, you got to fly back and be at training for Friday because you play on the weekend again.
Yep.
It's a huge commitment psychologically, physically. And I think it's fair to assume that inside of that locker room over the last couple of years, that there were a lot of players that were looking around and saying, this guy doesn't care enough. And that, I'm sorry to break it to a lot of people, and it's happened. I was a part of your New England Revolution for 4 years, in my rookie year, in some of the worst times in the club's history from 97 to 2001. And I can tell you, there were guys there that were taking a paycheck and couldn't have cared less about the club because they would look for the next opportunity to move on should the opportunity be there. So I guess big picture, I get where Timmy's coming from. I totally understand where Jermaine's coming from in the dangerous territory, but it will not affect that locker room, especially with Bruce Arena, Pat Noonan, Matt Reese, Dave Sarachan, and Kenny Arena running the show now.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. Brian, we have to run to a break, but do you have time to join us in the final segment for just a little while longer?
Yeah, I'm
awesome.
in, man.
Cool stuff. All right, hang tight for us. All right, we are going to run to a quick break. When we come back, we'll finish up our conversation with Brian Dunseth and talk a little bit more, as he mentioned, about Dom Dwyer and some other fun stuff taking place in MLS. You're listening to Two Up Front, presented by Three Lions Pub. Hang with us. Back with more right after this.
Three Lions Pub in Milwaukee, Wisconsin is just the place for me. They've got everything. Great pub food, a wonderful selection of draft beers, and a brilliant atmosphere, especially during Premier League matches. Check out the Three Lions Pub menu at threelionspub.com, where you can also find all their specials and the great events that take place throughout the year. Three Lions Pub, where across the pond is now across the street.
Welcome back to Two Up Front, presented by Three Lions Pub here at the Attention Era Media Studios. Continuing on our conversation with Sirius XMFC's Brian Dunseth. He joined us last segment and just couldn't get enough of us. He wanted to stay around for one more segment. I had to ask him to stay for one more. But either way, Brian, I appreciate you staying around for a little bit longer.
Yeah, no problem, man. Sorry, I was rambling on. I was trying to do justice to the situation.
I'm glad you did. I think people need to hear your opinion, especially knowing that you have, to an extent, more of an inside look at it because of your relationships with the players, and as a previous player as well, too. I think that's fantastic to hear your lens on things to kind of correct us crazy people at times that are like, that's not what's really going on. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, all good, man. All good.
Yeah, you asked me a funny question on the while we were on break about if the New England Revolution had signed any center backs or just in general if they'd done anything this offseason. And I laughed because no, they haven't. They haven't done a single thing. And that's actually one of the things I had just on my notes about that I wanted to talk about in the last segment, and it literally just says "Revolution are sad," and that it's so hard.
Did you draw an emoji for the sad face?
I wanted to. I didn't want to beat the dead horse, but it's really sad and maddening when they're literally one of the only teams, if not the only team in the offseason that doesn't do a single thing. And I know, and you mentioned obviously as a previous player as well for the team as well too, but. To an extent, they're pretty well set on the front half of the roster in terms of the midfield and forward positions. I think they're pretty good. But the center backs defensively, there's some big holes that need to be filled, and the Revolution don't seem to be in any rush to do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I pulled up the roster after we were kind of joking around in the break, and it's funny. There's so many good players that jump off the page.
Yes,
and I agree with you. The front side of the roster is fantastic.
I'd argue one of the best attacking sides, if not the best attacking side on paper. Easily.
And then you get to defense, and I love Tierney. I'm still not sure if outside back is his best position, but much like the conversation about Graham Zusi, I get that wide players can fit that role with the right system. Andrew Farrell, I know he can play outside right, or he can play centrally. I've always liked London Woodbury. I've always thought he deserved another chance, and I'm glad he finally got one. But it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's picking up Cody Cropper late is a good addition as a backup with Bobby Shuttleworth. I mean, center backs. Yeah. I mean, you've got assets to play with. I heard Kellen Rowe's name mentioned from a lot of different teams trying to pry him away from New England, but Burnsy and Heaps aren't going to let that happen anytime soon.
No.
Not unless there's a King's ransom. And we know the King's ransom is officially $400,000 general allocation money, with Chicago getting Dax McCarty out of New York Red Bulls at this point. I mean... I just look at that team and Lee Wynn and Agudelo and Kai and Diego Fagundes and Kellen and Teal and
it's a long list of players that you're like, how is this team not like competing, excessively every single year? But I mean, last season obviously there were some injuries as well too. But the defensive side of the things, I mean, it's
MLS, man.
It
MLS.
is exactly
Columbus and Portland and New England and just a couple years ago, LA.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, 4 teams that I know LA made the playoffs, but 3 out of the 4 teams that have made an MLS Cup final over the last couple of years aren't involved. It's a weird league, MLS.
It is.
You're rewarded for your shortcomings. So hopefully Burnsy and Heaps have been stockpiling all this target allocation money and general allocation money and have some targets they can acquire pretty soon.
That would definitely be a lovely thing as a Revolution supporter. You briefly mentioned it, and I talked about it earlier in the show as well too. Just to go back to the national team briefly, Dom Dwyer saying he'll have hopefully have U.S. national team or just U.S. citizenship in February.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I think that's very exciting for him and his family as a whole as well too. But U.S. soccer fans are hoping that means he's going to get a call up as well to the national team. I would be at least curious to see what would happen if he gets a camp call for a friendly. But is he the type of player that the national team needs right now?
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. I kind of equate him to Taylor Twellman, to Jason Kreis. Stevie Ralston, to Ante Razov, to Jeff Cunningham, just a couple guys off the top of my head.
It's good company to be in.
Have been phenomenal in Major League Soccer, but for one reason or another, never saw a long-term career with the national team. And that happens. I mean, with the way Bruce and Bob and Jurgen had very clear targets of who they wanted to play, and a lot of loyalty involved there. Here's the way I look at Dom, and I said this on Twitter when someone put this out there immediately after this announcement came out. Dom, for me, becomes the number 3 forward immediately.
Yeah.
And here's why. Josie and Bobby deserve to be the 1-2 combination. I have no idea what position Jordan Morris plays. I have no idea what position Gyasi Zardes plays.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Johansson has been inconsistent. Juan Agudelo, and again, I just was singing from the rooftops about how much I want him to succeed. He's still unproven at that level.
Exactly.
Wondolowski should be gone at this point, and it should be. And I love Wando,
of course,
but at his age, he should not be the guy that we're calling in.
Exactly.
Going forward, so Dom to me can score. He can play point by himself. He can play off the shoulder of any forward. The only concern that I have for Dom Dwyer is that I equate him to kind of I always say he's kind of like the Luis Suarez of MLS. In that he plays that spearhead, but he runs defenders down, and he's so antagonistic with the way that he plays that specific position.
Yeah.
It's brilliant for MLS. He gets under every defender's skin, and he forces so many turnovers, and he gets in the mind of a defender. That, for what his strength is in MLS, that's my concern at the international level, because there are much higher and more significant consequences when things go wrong.
Yes.
So that being said, I still think Dom Dwyer brings an asset that we have not seen in that specific position for a long, long time.
I agree. I would be very curious to see a camp with Dwyer and Agudelo and Wood and Altidore, like you mentioned, and even Jordan and Josh.
Mane.
Oh, my goodness. If you get all those
Can you imagine how fast?
Yeah. And that's what some people have said, too, about that's why the U.S. hasn't done so well recently, is because they're just not fast enough. I'm like,
well, it's funny, too, because you go back, and one of the things that I absolutely give Jurgen so much credit for was putting the team in tough environments, not just playing CONCACAF region, like going to France and going to Slovakia and going to Belgium and going to Germany and going to Netherlands. But the other conversation to be had is why the U.S. was so successful in winning those games on the road wasn't just because it was the end of the season. It was because Jurgen was utilizing 6 substitutions. So there's a bit of a gray area in these wins. But if you look at the starting lineup, the 3 changes at halftime, and then the 3 more changes coming on, usually those last 3 changes were some sort of combination of Bobby Wood, Jordan Morris, and DeAndre Yedlin with just absolute speed and just killing defenders. Well, that's what we have. We have those players. We have those physical traits in players. It's just that when you're playing in a qualifier or you're playing in a tournament where you have 3 substitutions, now you got it right. And I think that's where there was a disconnect between how are we winning these games against these massive countries, and then we go to the Gold Cup and we're losing against Panama.
Yeah.
Well, it's because maybe he didn't get the starting 11 right, and he only had 3 substitutions as opposed to 6 substitutions. But I love the idea of all of this speed being available to Bruce Arena.
I would agree with you on that one. All right, Brian, we got to cut it off there, unfortunately. But thank you so much for jumping on for 2 segments today. I really appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward, and let's try to get together when I head out to Boston when Real Salt Lake comes out. I'm coming to town. I'm coming old stomping grounds. I'm going to go see my old Norwood stomping grounds. So
I love it. I love it. We'll have to try to work something out, Brian. I appreciate the time, sir. Thank you.
All right, have a good one, man.
Thank you. There goes Brian Dunseth of Sirius XM-FC on the shopfutsal.com call-in line. Special thanks to all our guests that joined the show today. Yael Averbuch of FC Kansas City, RJ Allen of Backline Soccer, and we just heard from Brian Dunseth of Sirius XM-FC as well. If you missed any of the program today, you can go to our website, 2upfrontsoccer.com, and check all of the on-demand features that you have there. You can get it on Spreaker.com, on iTunes, the Sports Podcasting Network, iHeartRadio, and so much more. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's edition. For Simon Provan, I'm Baxter Colburn. With our manager being the one above, we are 2 Up Front.